Moving on, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Andrew Wheeler issued a proposed rule under the Renewable Fuel Standards program last week. That rule would set the minimum amount of renewable fuel obligations that must be supplied to the market in the year 2020 at 15 billion gallons. On many counts, that could be construed as good news for the ethanol industry, but some argue it isn't enough. Let's toss it over to Market Journal's Bill Dodd with more.
That's right, Troy. There seems to be a bit of displeasure among some state leaders regarding the recent volume increases in the renewable volume obligations. The recent increase raises the 2020 supplied market amount by 120 million gallons. Now, to some, that may seem like a significant increase. However, when compared to the amount of fuel consumed in the United States on a daily basis, the proposed increase begins to look a bit like a drop in the bucket. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2018, the United States consumed 142.86 billion gallons of fuel. Now, that's an average of about 391.4 million gallons per day. Since taking office, President Trump has made good on his promise to make E15 available for year-round purchase. In that same time frame, the EPA, under his administration, has since quadrupled the number of RFS, or Renewable Fuel Standard waivers, granted to small refineries. Now, under the original guidelines of the Renewable Fuel Standards, the United States should be blending up to about 30 billion gallons of ethanol per year. Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts had this to say in response to the proposed Renewable Fuel Standard volume obligations. This proposal does not reflect the agency's legal duty to enforce a robust RFS or the President's commitment to our farmers. Ricketts also went on to urge the EPA to reallocate waived gallons and ensure that the agency is giving our farmers and ethanol producers the predictability they need, especially during tough times for agriculture." End quote. I recently spoke with Nebraska Ethanol Board Administrator Roger Berry, who conveyed to me that the production lost from the gallons waived by the EPA greatly outweighs the benefits of the proposed production increase.
It's a very, very, very minimal increase in the Renewable Fuel Standard, which, as a point of reference, is 10 billion gallon off of what the original Renewable Fuel Standard placed it to be. We're supposed to be blending about 30 billion gallon of ethanol into our fuel now. Well, with this 20.04 billion gallon that the 2020 proposed renewable volume obligation does, once again, 10 billion gallons short from where we were supposed to be on this. If you look at those small refinery exemptions, for the exemptions that were issued in the years of 17 and 18, there's 2.6 billion gallons that were lost due to those small refinery exemptions. 2.6 billion gallons is a whole lot more than a 120 million gallon increase. Plus, factor in, there's still 38 exemptions waiting to be approved by the EPA. So if they approve all those, I don't know what those gallons would amount to, but it would be, once again, it'd probably take us over a total of 3 billion gallons lost. So if we could have had those gallons put back in to the renewable volume obligations, the proposed renewable volume obligations, it would have had a huge effect on our producers here in Nebraska and across the nation. And let's keep in mind that we're supporting over 1,400 direct jobs right here in Nebraska alone. That's worth protecting.
Now, to put that in perspective, according to the EIA, Nebraska has more than 24 operational ethanol plants that use more than 700 million bushels of corn per year. The industry also produces more than 6.4 million metric tons of distillers' grains, and this is a high-protein feed ingredient used for cattle. Along with domestic use, Nebraska ethanol and distillers' grain are leading export goods to the state's international trading partners. And according to the Nebraska Ethanol Board, Nebraska's ethanol plants represent a $5 billion economic impact in the state. Now, it's not hard to see the impact the ethanol industry has on Midwest producers. With Nebraska ranking as the second largest ethanol producing state in the U.S., Iowa boasts over 40 plants with a capacity of more than 102 million barrels of fuel ethanol per year. With the use of a grant from the USDA's Biofuel Infrastructure Partnership, Iowa now has over 250 public E85 stations, which is third most in the nation behind Illinois and Minnesota, respectively. With the dawn of year-round E15 sales upon consumers, Roger tells me he thinks this product represents a real threat to oil conglomerates and expects to see resistance in getting the level of blending up to the numbers we should be seeing from the original Renewable Fuel Standard proposal.
It's going to be like always. It's going to be a huge fight. It is really, truly a David versus Goliath. The oil companies are huge. The ethanol industry isn't that big. They always refer to big ag. What's big ag? Agriculture is made up of family farmers. Over 95% of the farmers in this nation are family farmers. So where's big ag in that? There truly is big oil in the big conglomerates that they've with the billions and billions of profits, who basically have a monopoly on our fuels. That's why we're trying to get ethanol in there, and that's why it's so hard, and that's why there is always a fight that ensues when it comes to that. It all comes down to market share. That's really what it amounts to at the end of the day. The oil companies have said we will not give up any more than the 10% that we've already given up. Of course, the Renewable Fuel Standard says that we will have about 10% of ethanol blended into our fuel. So they've drawn the line in the sand, said no more than 10%. Now with E15 coming on, they see that as a huge threat, and they have really stepped up those wars where basically the media wars, I guess you could call them. You know, it's time for the American consumer to quit believing those lies and to start finding out for themselves that as they put more ethanol into their car, the air's going to get cleaner and their car is going to run better and they're going to have less money going out of their pockets. So prepare for a fight.
In short, while getting these numbers up would certainly give the ethanol industry a boost, as well as farmers, Roger says the consumer in agricultural states like Nebraska would undoubtedly benefit, as we have seen time and time again. As the farming community prospers, so does the state. Now next week we'll dive a bit deeper into the subject with Roger and examine how the oil and ethanol industries are in somewhat of a symbiotic relationship, whether they want to be or not. But for now, that's all I have, and I'll send it back to you, Troy.